like to gavel in our special meeting scheduled for 6 o'clock. At 7, we will go right into our regular scheduled Board of Aldermen meeting. If you'd all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Here.
Alderwoman Manister.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Toohey. Alderman Kramer.
Present.
Alderman Robertson. Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Harper.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move right into the employee handbook. We had an updated kind of where we left off at the last meeting. And all possible, we might be able to wrap this up this evening. So if you go to that last page, item 11, section 2.2, page 18, selection appointment.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a
Yes.
question about this.
Alderman Kramer.
One of the key words that is used in this section is retain, and I wanted to get a further clarification if that means retain an existing or hire a new.
Well, it's not retain an existing.
Okay.
Retain could be used.
Retain could be used in case the decision was made to terminate them, but then the board votes to retain them, like in an official action. But it's not, existing employees do not fall under this.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions or?
Are we actually on page 14, not page 18 of the handbook?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had my book here. I do not have it. So, Bola.
Section 2.2 is on page 14 of the
Okay.
revised book that we're working to.
All right, thank you.
To work with.
Okay, up here.
Is that right, Bola?
It's on 14. You're correct.
Thank you, all right.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns with this portion?
No, sir.
Okay. Is that all right? Okay. Want to move on to item 12 then, 2.1, page 12. Is that correct, Amy? Probably is then.
2.1 is on page 12, yes.
Okay.
Principal head of the mayor, director head.
Okay. Any
Well, question that comes up when we deal with this section, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but are we balancing the handbook with the code?
Well, the code would need to be.
The code,
Well-
the code currently has the fire department chief reporting to
Police.
fire department
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
chief reporting to the city administrator, the police department chief reporting to the public safety committee to work with. Are we going to work that through at this time, or when we get to the code, do we blend the code to make all things equal?
Yeah, I would think that's the way the process would work. I think we've talked about that before, right?
But we never seem to come to a decision.
Right.
Do the two chiefs report to the committee, or should the two chiefs report to the city administrator? This board has never made that decision as to how to make this work, so I'm not sure how you're going to approve the paragraphs until we resolve that, so that we get both the handbook and the code to respond correctly to what this board seems to want. And right now, the board's never taken a vote which way it should go.
Again, I've expressed my opinion on that. The department heads, from a day-to-day operational standpoint, should report to the city administrator. In order to coordinate all the activities of the city, it's important that you have that chain of command. I don't know why you would want one department head or even two reporting to a subcommittee of, reporting to the Board of a subcommittee of the Board of Aldermen. That committee can't take any action on its own. And that's really the confusion in the code book, why it was ever spelled out that the police chief would report to the Ways and Means Committee when the Ways and Means Committee really doesn't have any authority to do anything. And I think that even it makes more confusion because if it's a personnel matter, a raise matter, or whatever, any of those things can't be done without the full consent of the Board of Aldermen. And so, which again, going through the process, there was an issue that was brought to from a department head to the city administrator and needed board action, then it would be brought from the city administrator to the Board of Aldermen.
Not opposed to the
Right.
logic that you're using. The trick is that we have documents that tell us differently.
Well, right, and I think that needs to be corrected.
Ways
But
and
that's
Means or
really
public
the,
safety?
right, huh?
Ways and Means or public safety?
Well, public safety, I think that section in our code book that says that the police chief, and again, even where it says that, it doesn't say it says that the police chief reports to public safety.
Correct.
But what does that mean? It doesn't say for personnel action, for, whatever. Again, in the fact that the Ways and Means Committee on its own has no authority to do anything,
Wait a
except
minute.
recommend to the Board of Aldermen.
You're crisscrossing committees. The code that we're looking to approve, has the police chiefs reporting to the public safety
Yeah, I see.
committee. You're using Ways and
I'm sorry,
Means
I meant public safety.
to work
right.
with. Now, the city treasurer is to report to Ways and Means, which is something else that needs to be resolved.
But that's not again,
Yeah.
the city treasurer's appointed position.
I agree.
That's
but-
a separate,
But it has it
again,
reporting in the suggested new code book. It has the city treasurer reporting to the Ways and Means Committee.
that would be fine.
Okay.
That's just another oversight. I can tell you that really the city treasurer, the appointed position of city treasurer, I really don't know what the city treasurer does.
Used to be signing checks, but that authority's now been given to the city administrator and to the finance department.
That's
When
been
was that?
years in the making.
Um,
It wasn't recent.
No,
No.
it was before I was
No,
elected
this
official.
is, yes, that has been thing, but since then,
Probably.
it has never seemed to be clean up the code,
Our,
right what you're
our
doing.
attempt was to clean up the code so that it's in line with what he actually does, which
Right.
is primarily being on the pension board.
Right, yeah.
So for this evening's discussion, since no official vote can be taken, can we at least get the board members to chime in as to whether or not they are in agreement with the philosophy of the chiefs reporting to the city administrator or not?
Right.
So that we at least work that way forward, because that makes a difference how this book and the
I
code
agree.
resolve.
I agree.
And I'm not opposed to both chiefs reporting to the city administrator.
Okay. Alderman Saunders, sorry.
No. My question, I guess, would be for Frank or Attorney Hay, Attorney Albrecht. Class 4 cities, which appointments have to be made by the mayor? Like, which ones are shall?
Off the top of my head, it's police chief and city administrator, and there's a few others, but that's off the
Police
top
chief,
of my
fire
head.
chief.
I don't think it's fire.
Oh, I think it is. It's an appointed position.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry.
And just for a point of clarification, I don't think I've ever been to the meeting before, but in the cities I've worked at before, the police chief and the fire chief at times give reports to the board. Do they do that here? I mean, you say report to the city administrator. It sounds different than what it actually is. I mean, it's just really oversight. They're still reporting to the city in their official report made in public. I think it's important to make that distinction.
Yes.
Right.
I
Which
guess
is their role too, as being a participant on the public safety committee. They're still reporting their day-to-day activities and the things going on within the department to the committee, and which is the normal process. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, that's okay. I think what I was trying to get at is, through this whole process, it seems to me when we're going through this manual and that, we're trying to take politics out of a lot of decisions and have the professionals make those decisions. And so in situations where maybe we don't have to appoint a position but just have done that in the past, maybe we should start considering like making that a hiring type position. Do you know what I mean? Or have some kind of a process for that person to be, to work for the city. Now, when you appoint the police chief and the fire chief and director of planning, you'll make an appointment. But do we have a process in order to find those positions or fill those, since I'm new to the board?
Well, we've done it both ways. Again, last year I would say that wasn't the normal procedure, but because of the activities that were going on to a certain extent. But for instance, when we did the police chief the last time, we went through the Police Chief Association, Missouri State Police Chiefs Association. They actually did all of the advertising, interviewing, and then I think they had as many as 50 applications for the police chief's position. They narrowed it down to 20 some odd, I think. They actually interviewed the top 12, narrowed it down to the top 3, and then they made that recommendation back to us on the top 3. So that was the process we went through in selecting Chief Disbennett.
And so then do we get to review the top 3, the board?
Well, no, actually at that point, well, I mean, you could. I mean, that's just something, the board didn't ask to do that. Again, it was a recommendation and appointment of the mayor for that position. Honestly, I took the top candidate.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean,
right.
in your...
You know, so, you know, and they knew that, but they didn't ask if they could interview the other ones, right?
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm not
But,
saying...
I mean, if
I'm
they
just
had
saying
wanted
that's in
to, we
your,
could have, right.
in your opinion, you know, you
I
pick the
don't-
best. No,
right.
don't get me wrong. It's nothing about... I'm talking positions, please,
And
not
same way with city
individuals.
administrator. You know, again,
So-
we went through that process of you know, interviewing and a process of, and I had staff members come in and interview the top candidates for the city administrator's position. But ultimately, because of state statute, it becomes an appointment of the mayor. So it's a final action of the Board of Aldermen approving that appointment.
Right.
Right.
And I'm fine. I mean, I just want to clarify, though, for me, as an alderwoman, I would like, just like you do with Senate confirmation hearings and that, do you know what I mean? Some vetting, that we don't just say okay to a person. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
I
so,
would say that is the normal process, right?
okay.
Yep.
And then
Okay.
also, could you, I'm sorry, I had one other question, sorry, Alderman Leahy. In the past, and we're moving forward, but could you please, for the audience that's here, we've said that part of the problem is we gave too much control to the city administrator. And here now we're giving her even more power. And I just, if you could speak to that, Mayor Kelly.
Well, I don't think I ever said we gave too much control to the city administrator. You know, again, I think certain things were maybe taken out of context in what had happened. I think the controls were there, and maybe certain controls weren't being instituted by the city administrator. But you know, the real issue came down to the credit card usage by the city administrator. You know, some of the other things were really because of, I would just say, lack of management opposed to having the controls there. So it wasn't that the city administrator was given too much control. I think it was that, you know, just things were overlooked by a lot of people.
Okay.
Right.
I just wanted
So-
to, because that, you know, that seemed to have resonated with people, that was part of the problem. So I just kind of wanted to
Well, no,
clarify
and
that.
again, I think that's, you know.
Well, I know you said, I just wanted to clarify it. That was
No,
all.
and I think it's a good clarification, because I think ultimately you have to have people that are accountable for their positions. And I think, you know, we want to have department heads and the city administrator who are here overseeing the day-to-day operations of the city and doing a good job for us. You know, and you know, I think what people want to see or they don't want to see is they don't want to see the city in the paper and that kind of thing, you know, because if the city's running smoothly, that's the way it's going to be. And, you know, and then these meetings can be over in 15 or 20 minutes sometimes, which, you know, can happen. So, you know, but we need to give the professionals the tools that they need to do their jobs. And it's our job to oversee that. But, you know, I think we've got some good people in place and need to give them the chance to show us what they can do in those positions. So, okay.
Your Honor.
Alderman Lay.
Well, if I may, on page 12, you and I had talked earlier, are also the two definitions of a full-time employee and a part-time employee. The question that I raised is a full-time employee for the city of Brentwood is someone who works 1,500 hours per year, which is 28.8 hours per week. I asked if that was a correct or maybe a typo in that.
It is not a typo. This is the minimum, and I think the answer that Julie provided at the time is this is the minimum number of hours that loggers requires. That's our local government retirement system.
Can I make a suggestion to the Board of Aldermen that we look at that definition? I think a 28.8-hour work week to be constituted as a full-time employee seems to be rather low to work with. And it does make a difference because the defining that full-time employee also brings in all the benefits and everything on side of it. And I just found that to be rather low to work with. The part-time employee is anybody that doesn't work 1,500 hours a year. But I think that's something we should take a look at.
Julie, do you have, I mean, isn't that pretty normal?
Yeah, and there's like two different things that go along with this. First of all, our hands are tied by loggers because once they work 1,500 hours a week, they are eligible for loggers by state statute. So we have no choice but to consider them a full-time loggers eligible employee. Now,
1,500 hours per year.
1,500 hours per year. Sorry, what did I say?
Per week.
Per week. Wow.
And then there's other rules we get into.
It feels like that sometimes. No. But typically for budgeting purposes, we don't make people full-time employees at 28 hours per week. So that can be a different number. I mean, it could for all other benefits, it could be 32 hours a week. It could be 36 hours a week.
Well, right now, do we give those first of all, do we have any employees?
The only employees we have that are close to that, actually in Parks Department, work 32 hours a week.
Right.
So.
And then do we extend health insurance and those kinds to
For
them as
32
full-time
yes,
employees?
yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And is part of that because that's the nature of the jobs that they're doing within the parks, right? Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's all right. So, Alderwoman Saunders.
Attorney Hay, do you know what other municipalities define full-time, or is there a minimum, or?
The other
Well, Andy brought it.
handbooks that I've looked at define it as 1,500 hours too. We borrowed this language from another
From another
municipality.
Well, I would be more comfortable, if we have a definition of loggers eligible, that's fine, but I think that I would agree with Alderman Leahy that, 32 hours is what we're doing now, maybe we should stick with that.
Is that what it is for those employees? I wouldn't want to cut any existing employees out of their benefits. Is it 32? Okay, that's fine. Huh?
That's a 4-day work week.
Yeah, no, I understand. But just some jobs, that's the nature of it. They don't have, enough hours to make it a full-time job, but you still need to have those people there.
Well, but then that's the question, though. Do you make it, a couple part-time, and save the benefits? That's what I'm saying. I don't want to hurt anyone that's already in that position. I'm not saying that, but you see what I mean? You have to look as the nature. Is it a part-time job or is it a full-time job? Bola, do you know from your past experience at Richmond Heights what
This is exactly what there says.
there says? Okay.
I mean,
Thank
the
you.
only other thing we could possibly include is loggers in bracket.
Well, and that's what we're saying.
Oh.
Do you want
No,
to
I
make
think-
it 32? I mean, I don't want to, or do you just want to split the difference and make it 30 hours, and then we can look at it?
Something
say
that we could
32.
probably raise up at Ways and Means and bring it through the committees and bring
and
it
make
back
an
to the
adjustment
board.
if we need to.
This is just a work session. It's
Right.
just a matter of,
Well, but we're trying to get this on for our
Yeah.
next meeting to get done, so.
I'd be comfortable with 32
I would just suggest
hours.
there's only 3 employees who work over 28 hours.
Right.
HR is pretty good identifying employees, saying, hey, you're not going to work 29 hours and we're not going to hire you and give you full benefits. There's scheduling involved.
Right.
So the 4 hours, the difference between 32 and 28 actually gives the city probably more leeway. It needs to be flexible in certain situations. So unless there's a identifiable problem at the city where these employees are making or obtaining health care benefits and working 28, 29, 30 hours, 31 hours, I don't really see it as an issue for this handbook. And if it is, you can always go back and change the handbook next year.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Alderman Kramer?
Your Honor, point of order, back to the topic where we were, which is on page 12, 2.1. There was a reference to the code, and there was a reference to the word reporting. And the word that's used in the proposed language as well as in the draft is that these department heads, as well as the division directors, will be responsible to the city clerk administrator. And I think that's a very important distinction. And in response to Alderman Leahy's query, that I'm totally fine with that, the way that language is spelled out, as far as the department heads, including the police chief, fire chief, the directors of planning and development, and assistant city administrator reporting to, and also responsible to our city administrator. And I think Attorney Hay will probably agree that the whole idea here is to continue to funnel all the responsibilities to the city administrator, especially for not only logistics but liability reasons.
Well, where we were coming from a legal perspective, police department isn't necessarily going up. It's going sideways, funnels to the city administrator. That's for an HR purpose.
Right.
The city administrator is not going to get involved with the every day-to-day activities of police department or fire department. From a legal perspective, what we've encountered at other cities is police departments, fire departments conducting their own investigation and a report of harassment or discrimination. And they're going to follow these guidelines that they have in their own manuals, and they, most often than not, they don't do it properly because they don't have any training in HR. So that's why we have them reporting sideways to the city administrator. And those three positions, if you want to picture in your head, all go up to the city, the board, during the meeting. So it's not necessarily they're reporting up to the city administrator. There's just an additional oversight for HR purposes.
And responsible to the city administrator, who's responsible to the board.
Sure. I mean, if the city administrator discovers that there's a report of discrimination and it was not reported to the city and there was no investigation, obviously that's going to be some responsibility that's going to have to be reported to the city.
Right.
Thank you.
And then, well, the one last item that I actually asked to be put on here and looking through the manual, and this goes back, I think, to there is a memo attached here from Julie. One of the benefits that we give to our existing employees is we have allowed them to accrue their sick days up to 120 days, and then upon retirement, they would be paid out those days. I think it's suggested in the current version of the handbook that for future employees, we would not allow them to do that. And I just don't think that that's a good practice for the city. I think it's going to create, I think that the reason for allowing our civil employees to accrue those benefits is that really that's kind of, one, it's an incentive, but two, it's also kind of a retirement benefit to them after they've had a number of years of service with the city of Brentwood. In order for an employee to accrue that 120 days, they would have been here, had to be here at least 12 years, and in that 12 years had not had any sick days. Again, I think that would show that you had a good employee that was here maybe on those days that they didn't feel good and that kind of thing, and that it is a benefit for them upon their retirement as a benefit to them as a city employee from the city of Brentwood. It's not unusual in government jobs, school districts, and I agree there's a limit to what you want to do on that. I think 120 is a good number. Some of the school districts don't have any limit on the number of days that they can accrue. But I think the other thing that it would do is if we instituted that now, any of those new employees coming in, I think what you would have is a situation where they know now that they would not be able to accrue those benefits, those days, and they would just use them every year. And so the other thing is by in certain departments, especially police and fire, and in public works, a lot of times when you have somebody call in sick, it's a savings for us for them not to be sick because on a lot of those situations where somebody's called in sick, we have to bring somebody in to fill that position. So that's normally time and a half. And so that's an additional cost to the city if we have to fill that position when they're not here. And I think you're putting new employees on a different level from existing employees, which I think could create some kind of tension, if not tension, the fact that those new employees would just use those sick days every year because they know they can't save them. But go ahead.
First of all, I think new employees, I know what you're saying about that tension, but in this market, they'll be glad to get a job. So, I mean, it's a different market. I mean, our kids, as you know, didn't have the opportunities. When we came out of school, you paid your dues and you had multiple offers. Here, it's very competitive. Before I was elected, you told me that the reason that we did the 120 days was because we didn't have short-term disability. And then you said that when we got the short-term disability, the intent was to phase this out, but then it just never happened. Like I said, again, I'm all in favor of grandfathering in everyone that has it. And then, like you were saying, that people that don't, I mean, if we give, let's say, 10 sick days a year or whatever's, I'm sorry. I apologize. Come on, Dr. Clark. Okay, so if at the end of the year, the 10 days or whatever, they didn't take them, then I would be okay, like if we paid them for the 10 days. So that, in other words, if they work, they get the salary for that day. And if they, at the end of the year, then they can still get the 10 days, but we're not accruing this huge liability. And I think, retirement needs to be defined as retirement. I mean, we give them loggers and we have pension plans and that. So I think we're fairly generous there. So those are just my thoughts.
Well, again, I think there may have been a little bit of confusion in that. The reason, I think, going way back when they allowed the employees to accrue their sick days was because of that, especially for the police and firemen that, physical activity is a big part of their jobs, and if they could have a somewhat minor injury but not being able to work. And so without that benefit, of being able to accrue their sick days. But as far as being something that they could accrue and then have as a benefit when they retire or leave the city, again, it would have to still be somebody that has worked here and been here, done a good job for the city in order to get that, or else they wouldn't have the sick days and so forth. I still believe it is a benefit, and there isn't any real savings to the city to pay them at the end of the year that they didn't use it, than opposed to waiting till they retire, except that their salaries may be a little bit different from an hourly wage standpoint. But it is still, I think, an incentive for them to do a good job and be dedicated employees to the city of Brentwood, and it's been a long-standing benefit for the employees. They don't get huge retirement parties and those kinds of things when they leave civil service, like a lot of other organizations do, or bonuses when they retire. Again, the police and firemen's pension is a little bit different than our other employees, but I think after, well, I'd have to look, but after 30, do you know offhand, like after 30 years of service, how much do they get of their existing pay? Do we know that? All right, but the other thing is it's not really, well, it is a liability of the city because you're carrying those sick days on the books, but if it's handled properly, I think the way the city should address it from a financing standpoint is, one, we do not pay lump sums when somebody retires. And in most situations, what the city has done in the past is that when even a policeman or a fireman has retired, or a public works employee, if they're being paid out those days, we don't hire somebody in to fill that position until they're off of the books, so that we don't have those double salaries or wages going out. And in most situations, it can be done that way. Is a way that, and so I think what you would want in the handbook is that there would, it's the city will pay them out over a period of time, opposed to paying lump sums, which some people have requested and been given in the past. But that way you spread that cost out over that period of time, and then don't hire somebody to fill that position until they are off the books, is the way it's been done in the past. So, yes.
So what you're proposing is if you would pay it out not to exceed their monthly paycheck, the city would not see any financial harm because you're not hiring another person to take that position.
That's what we've done in the past. Yeah. Right. So.
I would just suggest that that would be spelled out in the.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, because if we did it, we would have to add that in here. Right. Alderman Lee.
Let's address it piece by piece, because what you just explained contradicts itself back and forth. You've got 120 days that you can earn up to and accrue for sick time.
Mhm.
The intent being because we did not offer the short-term disability. Well, we do offer short-term disability. It was one of the things that if we were going to stay with this policy, I wanted to remove out. We don't have the votes to do that. The limit is you're double dipping them. You're offering the short term and you're allowing them to accrue up to 120 days to work it through. Now, which is it that the city really wants to accomplish? Do you want to allow them to accrue up that long? And if so, then why should we be offering short-term disability?
Well, okay.
That's the first question.
All right. Well, what happened, the reason we started offering short-term disability, I think that's really been in the last 6 or 7 years. We had a couple of employees who had long
Yes.
standing illnesses, who were, again, I would say dedicated employees who used up all of their sick days, no longer had it. Then when they had both of them, the examples I can think of, well, actually more than a couple,
yes.
but they didn't have any sick days left because they had to use them, and then they got to the point where they were being hospitalized again. And so in between that short term and when the long term kicked in was almost 2 months, I think, that they went without a paycheck. And so it's really two different things, the short term, I mean, the sick days, and because most of the time if they're using, they have to use their sick days first before the short time would kick in.
Well, they want to because they get paid 100% versus 60.
Right. And so, we really did that because we saw some circumstances where our employees, again, because the illnesses, because of circumstances, there's a lot of times when they get to that point when they need it, they've already used all of their sick days. So that's why we instituted the short-term disability. Again, the reason years ago, long time before any of us were here, when they instituted letting them save their accrue their sick days, that was one of the primary reasons. But it also became a benefit to those employees. A lot of them, again, look at as a benefit as when they retire now. I can see if the city of Brentwood was financially strapped and we were looking at not having enough money to pay our bills and those kinds of things. But I kind of feel like our employees are our best asset. And I've said it before. We could go out and we can hire the parks from a couple of cities. That let me put it this way: you get what you paid for. And I think cutting employees' benefits or cutting their wages isn't the way we want. What we want to do here in the city of Brentwood, because I think we have an expectation, and the residents have an expectation that our employees do a good job. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart from a lot of other communities. And so again, separate there's a number of things going on here, but it is a benefit for them for being good employees and long service to the city of Brentwood that they get that upon leaving the city or retiring at that retirement age.
But your intent is, I want to accumulate the 120 days to help tide over a disability, but I offer you the short-term disability insurance that works through. So does the offering of the short-term disability that the city's paying for, is it a good policy, or is it so bad that I got to keep the 120 days accrual? I think if you're going to continue offering the short term, that we actually can look at dropping this back to a more reasonable time arrangement.
But I guess you could, but it still goes back to the fact that in those situations where the employee needed the short-term disability, it wasn't because they hadn't accrued. I mean, it's because they're in a situation where they didn't have any days left. And so
Pat,
I understand what you're saying to a certain extent, but I think you're mixing apples with oranges.
Now, let's take it to the second step. In your policy that you have here, upon the third day of a person calling in sick, they are required to get a doctor's note to say, hey, I'm out, legitimate sickness. versus what you were alluding to is to make sure that they don't just, oh, can't accrue anymore, so I'm going to just go use it type arrangement. We can adjust that problem by requiring a doctor's note at the second day of being in illness versus to work through. Now, I don't think that we get into that much trouble.
Nobody does that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody does what, Bola? Nobody
Requires it after
requires
2
a doctor's
days.
note on the second day out?
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Not a municipal government, they don't.
Well, municipal government, maybe not, but commercial industry does to work with. And maybe we're being too laxed at that to work with. Now we get into the discussion of attendance bonus. Don't use your sick day, get your $50 each quarter and the $200 at the end of the year because you didn't use anything. And your argument of, well, if I can't accrue it, I might as well use it so I can at least get my compensation for it to work with.
That's
I think
why
the city
in-
needs to look at
That's why
and
in
define a
most-
policy that's reasonable.
Well, and again, I think the 120 days is reasonable, I guess is my point. What you see in the private sector, I bet you if you went out and did a survey, what you would see is there's very few large companies anyway that even have sick days anymore, because that's exactly what was happening. Everybody just used them anyway. So they have choice days where they just, if they use them for sick days or they use them for the day they want to take off, because that's what was happening in reality anyway.
So we
because when they aren't able to accrue them after a certain point, they're going to use them. And so, again, there's a cost to having them use it. We can't pay them out at the end of each year.
No.
Kind of the same reason that we have to eliminate the attendance bonus.
Yes.
So, because that, anyway.
But
So
if we take the time for the city to define what it constitutes as a reasonable policy, what we've left is these nice open gapes that we've developed over time, yet we've thrown in benefits that realistically should balance out what we're doing and at least make it reasonable, and we've never corrected anything. And I think the policy is extremely generous. I think the city can look at this and bring it back to a reasonable. We also got into the problem that we had where people were out on longer-term disability, had no more sick time, and the city allowed other employees to donate their sick time to that person that was out to get them paid and keep a paycheck coming. Well, somehow record keepings may not have been all the best that they should have been to keep everything accounted
that's why
correctly.
we instituted the short-term disability.
Well, I think this policy has yet to be cleaned up and run as a good.
And that's why I said I think it
policy.
should be 120 days, and I
No,
think that
I think-
you put it in there that you pay them out over a period of time, no lump sums, and and I think we'll continue to get good employees, and it's a benefit that they deserve. That's just my opinion. So.
We are talking pages, what is this, 74, 75, and 76.
Alderman Saunders.
The consensus from the group moving forward was that everyone, the ones that have it are grandfathered in, but we wouldn't continue it going forward. So Mayor Kelly shared his opinion, but that was the consensus moving forward. And again, I can't reiterate the need for a compensation survey so that our positions line up with the positions of other municipalities. I'm not talking spot surveys, I'm talking a full-fledged compensation survey so that we can make sure that we're paying. You keep saying, I believe we have great dedicated employees, but I'm dedicated because it's just, first of all, because it's my job. I mean, to this position, I do the homework, I do the work, first of all, because it's my reputation, and regardless of pay. And then, pay is nice. And as I said, I agree paying people at the high end of the mark because you don't want turnover. You want to keep those employees. But we have to know at a certain point, like for instance, you're saying, so then that ran out and then they need short-term disability. I have to pay for all of that what-if scenario to be covered. That comes out of our pocket. We have to buy all of those packages. So are you telling me that we pay such poor salaries that we have to give all of these benefits? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, what I've been told is somebody leaves Brentwood, there's 60 applications within a day. So I think we really need to know where we stand in the market, because I want dedicated employees, I want to reward our employees, but we also have the obligation to be responsible with the residents' tax dollars. So I just, I mean, there's a balance in that.
And I think we are, and I think the reason you have people applying here is because they know they're treated fairly, and especially from a municipal government standpoint. You know, if you're not going to offer them those kinds of benefits, you're not going to have it. I mean, you know, you can do a survey. We got one that Richmond Heights did within the last 2 years of cities are basically our peers, and a lot of them offer the same kind of benefits that we are offering. We have a memo here from Julie that says that it spells out six of the communities that they surveyed do not offer any cumulative sick payout at the end. Those include Crestwood, Creveport, De Pere, Kirkwood, Maryland Heights, and Richmond Heights. 4 other communities have same sort of sick leave payout or conversion policies, but only upon eligible retirement. Those are Ferguson, Frontenac, Lake St. Louis, and Olivet. And then 5 remaining communities have some kind of general policy of payout like we do, maybe not up to 120 days. So again, it's not uncommon, and all those are listed in what there's are. So, we continue to get into let's survey, let's do this, let's do that, and we never get anywhere.
Well, we had a consensus.
Well, the committee had a consensus. It was never talked about at the Board of Aldermen. And again, I don't go to committee meetings, and that's why I'm not, unless I was asked to go, and that's why I'm giving my opinion here. I think, again, I'll leave it at this, our employees are our best asset. They're the ones out there that represent us on a day-to-day basis out, and you can go to other cities and you can hear how they complain about their services, and we do a lot here that other cities don't do. Our sewer lateral program, I mean, Jim was telling me today, they're backed up on sewer lateral houses that need to have work done their sewer lateral. Other cities don't even do that. And I think the reason the guys work hard and try to get that done and represent us well is because they know they're being taken care of by us and by the residents, and they appreciate that. We could have a really bad storm and everybody just say, well, you know what, I'm going to get paid anyway, I don't need to go in. They can call in sick. But our guys are dedicated. They come in, they work hard, and I just think they're our best asset. And we should take care of them, and we have the ability to do it, and we should. So, I'll leave it at that.
Should we at least wait until our reserves are at our minimum level?
Well, that's an arbitrary number too. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of that. I mean, that's fine.
Your Honor.
Alderman Kramer.
I understand this is a passionate topic for you. And we did debate this over several periods at the Ways and Means Committee. I think that concurrent with the statement that Alderwoman Saunders has made, we did come to a consensus, which was that we realistically didn't think it was a good idea for the employees to use sick leave as a retirement aid or a retirement portion, and that somewhere between nothing and everything maybe was a conversation, but we did entertain a legal opinion, which was that after the period of time that the book was adopted, that there would be grandfathering, but going forward, it would be entirely different. And I really do think that's a prudent way to go. Our employees, despite the fact that we don't have a survey, I think are very well compensated. They know they're rewarded. There are other benefits that they do receive. Falling in line with Alderman Leahy and I guess once again the conversation we had at Ways and Means, and I apologize, it may be different than what your conclusion is, but I really do feel like our employees, some of whom have spoken to me since we had our Ways and Means Committee meeting, said that they were feeling like they were going to not get that in the future anyway. They felt like we were going to be taking that away, and they were okay with that because they're getting so much else. I think there are other ways that we can compensate them without making their sick leave a bank for them to get at the end. And maybe we can work on ways to do that. I just personally don't think that this is the way to do it.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then I think they'll be able to put this together for our next meeting. Good.
And this would then come to the full Board of Aldermen. It won't go back to the Ways and Means
No,
Committee.
right. Okay, we will take a break and come back at 7 o'clock to start a regular meeting.
Don't, Kevin's not copying this. Okay, we're good.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started again. We had already opened our meeting, so we.
These are like that.
I'm sorry, are you ready? Yes. We had already had our Pledge of Allegiance and roll call. I will note that Alderman Tui is here for the regular Board of Aldermen meeting, and so is Alderman Robertson. First item on the agenda,
Your Honor,
I'm sorry?
we have not done an official roll call for this meeting.
Yes.
I think that needs to be done still.
Well,
Or just do it again.
Separate, different.
all right, okay, roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Here.
Alderwoman Manister.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Tui.
Here.
Alderman Kramer.
Present.
Alderman Robertson.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Harper.
Okay. Next item, approval of the agenda for the regular Board of Aldermen meeting for March 4, 2013. Are any changes to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, consideration approval of the minutes. First is the Board of Aldermen regular meeting from February 4th, 2013. Any changes?
I have changes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
On page 5, Resolution 989, after Alderman Kramer has read his synopsis, we say, Alderwoman question, why are we approving without the application? Bola said we didn't have another meeting. I asked about the cost. Bola estimated $800,000, and the city would be responsible for 20%. Mayor clarified this is over 3 years. And then Alderwoman Saunders inquired if the city is aware of the deadlines for these grants. Mayor Kelly clarified that it's usually around this time of year. The email East-West Gateway sends is the dollar amount. Okay, thanks. And then on page 6, again after we sponsored East-West Gateway Council for the Hanley Industrial Court, after Alderman Kramer's synopsis, Alderwoman Saunders clarified that I voted yes for the Manchester Road grant because the improvements are sorely needed, even though it was against my better judgment because we don't have all our ducks in a row. The Hanley Industrial application is not complete, and we don't know DCM, Hanley Industrial Court Association's contribution. And that's it.
Yeah, we'll have all those updates tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. You have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
And second?
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor?
I think you need to have a motion to approve the amendment.
Well, it were her statements, but that's fine. Well, that's what we're doing by.
As amended.
Okay.
As amended, yeah.
All in favor of approving the agenda, or the minutes as amended? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next, the minutes from the special meeting from February 12th, 2013. Any changes? Motion,
to
please.
approve As submitted, Your Honor.
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next is from the special meeting from February 20th, 2013.
Motion to approve it as submitted, Your Honor.
And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, presentations. We don't have any this evening. Public hearing, none scheduled. Bids, we had one.
Actually, 2.
Well, two, I'm sorry, yes, county services too. Okay.
The city went out to bid for accounting and audit services. on February 14th was the deadline for everyone to respond. We received a total of 6 responses for audit services and 5 for accounting services. Gina Jarvis, the finance director, and I rated each one of the submittals based on several key factors, which included the quality of their proposals, the governmental experience of the firm, qualifications and experience of the assigned staff to the city, and their ability to complete the services in a timely manner, and the total cost. The recommendation to Ways and Means was to select Showalter and Jabouri for audit services for a 3-year contract at $18,400 the first year, 2012, $18,500 fiscal year 2013, and fiscal year 2014, $18,600. Would you like me to read all the other submittals, or no? Okay. And then for accounting services, staff made a recommendation to Ways and Means as well to select Showalter and Jabouri, 3-year contract at $9,600 for fiscal year 2012, fiscal year 2013, $9,800, and fiscal year 2014, $9,975.
Okay. And we have ordinances on, so we can
yes.
discuss those when we get to that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Next item, item 8, hearing of any matters of any person present. If anybody would like to please address the Board of Aldermen, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Bob Addis, 9015 Bridgeport. First thing I would like to publicly and personally thank and commend all the personnel of Public Works for the superlative job they do year-round. Summer, winter, rain, snow, whatever. They need a pat on the back, a silver dollar, and a box of Milky Ways.
Thank you.
Put that in the budget.
Bob, that's wonderful. Thank you.
My name is Brecht. I'll be really brief here. I'm here on behalf of Congresswoman Ann Wagner's office, and I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself and tell you a tiny bit about the Congresswoman. We have a new 2nd congressional district this year, which goes all the way from the northern part of Jefferson County all the way up to the southern part of St. Charles County. So here in Brentwood, we're kind of smack dab in the middle. The Congresswoman was sworn in just a little over 2 months ago. She's a member of the Financial Services Committee and the freshman representative to House leadership. We understand that the municipal governments throughout the 2nd congressional district are closest to the people, and we do not want to get in your way, if at all possible. However, if there's anything that we can do for you all have my contact information. Please feel free to contact us. And thank you very much for letting me speak tonight.
Great. Thanks. Oh, sure, Bob.
I'm not terribly long-winded. I have COPD and asthma. Anyway, getting back to the situation with the sick days, accruable and so forth. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to introduction, reading, and passage of bills. If I can have a motion for the first and second readings of bill number 5732, 5733, 5734, 5735, and 5736.
So moved, Your Honor, for first and second reading on the same night.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. First reading of bill number 5732, please.
First reading bill number 5732 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract on behalf of the city of Brentwood, Missouri with State Mechanical Services, Inc., 10510 Lackawanna Road, St. Louis, Missouri 63114, for a Brentwood Recreation Complex refrigeration HVAC heat recovery system for 1 year commencing on April 9, 2013, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Bill 5732 for state mechanical annual contract renewal. This bill is for an ordinance authorizing the mayor of our city to execute a contract on behalf of the city of Brentwood, Missouri with State Mechanical Services, Inc., that for the Brentwood Recreation Complex refrigeration, HVAC, heat recovery system, and associated services for 1 year. That's commencing April 9th, 2013. The Contract was originally approved in 2012 with including an option for a one-year extension. This will be the 5th renewal year. Staff is also going out to bid January 2014 for the same services. Cost is in the budget of $57,718.
Thank you. Any questions? Second reading, please.
Second reading Bill Number 5732 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract on behalf of the City of Brentwood, Missouri with State Mechanical Services, Inc., 10510 Lacklin Road, St. Louis, Missouri, 63114, for a Brentwood Recreation Complex refrigeration HVAC heat recovery system for 1 year, commencing on April 9, 2013, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Your Honor.
Okay. Alderman Kramer.
Paula, did we have this in time at all to chat about it at the Ways and Means? I can't remember when this came in. Would this have come on our agenda?
It's an extension of an existing contract.
Existing contract.
Yeah.
It was
Have to renew
presented
it.
to Public Works.
I didn't know if it, oh, I didn't know.
Public Works, yeah.
I didn't know if it was mentioned or not. I'm just curious.
Probably not.
Okay. Thank you.
A motion, please.
Motion to approve Bill 5732 into ordinance.
Need second?
Second.
We had a first and second. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Toohey.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Bill
Oh,
number.
Bill number 5732 is now ordinance number 4407.
See, I actually waited this time. First reading of bill number 5733, please.
First reading Bill Number 5733 by title only, an ordinance approving site plan approval for an outdoor smoker at Twin Oak Wood-Fired Fair, providing for the enforcement of this ordinance and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Synopsis, please.
Your Honor, Bill 5733 for the Twin Oak Restaurant and their smoker upgrade request and security fencing. This is for an ordinance approving same and a site plan for that at the Twin Oak Wood-Fired Fair, not far from the corner of Strassner and Hanley Roads. Planning and Zoning Commission has returned its final report recommending its approval for the application for both the outdoor smoker and the security fence.
Your Honor,
Great. Alderman.
has anybody looked at the wind directions that this thing isn't going to put smoke inside some of the condos?
Oh, well,
Because
it's on the east, northeast corner of their building closest to Hanley Road, so it's as far away as it can be.
To work with, but
Freddie is actually here, the owner, but I really don't, do they really put off that much smoke?
Not a lot, and what it puts off is very.
understand, but my feeling is
Dogs will
you've
be
got
happy.
the hotel,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Freddie, if you can come up to it.
you've got the hotel and your one set of buildings right there that you're actually forming a blockade in that arrangement. And I don't want any of your tenants calling you up someday saying, by the way, my room's got a nice aroma to it, but I'm tired of it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, can you give us your full name too? Sorry.
yeah. My name is Bill Friedrichs, one of the owners of Twin Oak Wood-Fired Fair. The wind in that part of Brentwood predominantly comes up Strassner Road. You know, from the west to the east, it's prevailing southwest wind. And what it's going to do with the smoke is blow most of the smoke onto Hanley Road and off into Richmond Heights.
Hopefully,
And there's not going to be a lot of smoke.
which will bring people to your restaurant.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Very rarely do we get an east wind. It's bad for duck hunting.
Don't leave.
All right, Alderman Kramer.
Yes, Your Honor. Just comment for you. I just wanted to say thank you for being one of our restaurants, one of the patrons I am of their establishment, and I have been for a while. And that's the good part. The sad part for me is, and I'm hopeful that at some point in the future that you all will come forward with an application for a revised signage package. I know that we've discussed that in the past.
We're working on that right now.
Okay. Awesome.
What do you mean by that is a bigger sign?
Bigger sign.
No, we appreciate everything you do in the community. You're doing a great
Thank you
job.
very
We
much.
appreciate it. Good.
I just
Alderman
have,
Saunders.
I just have one question. We, when they asked, Deerbergs had put in a request for their smoker outside, we performed some kind of test for smells. Was that not needed for this particular application? Maybe Chairman Geppert, because that was done at Planning and Zoning.
I don't think we did it.
we didn't
I think
do it.
they did that in De Pere. but-
Because it was close to a residential neighborhood.
Right, but they didn't
that
do
right?
it for the one in this one. in here.
They didn't do it for our,
No, we did not.
we didn't look at a study from, oh, that was
No.
De Pere's that we looked at?
Yes.
Well, we talked that they
We
had done
heard
it in De
about it.
Pere, but
We heard
because of
it.
the commercial area, we didn't think
They
it was
didn't do it
necessary.
for us.
Oh, okay, I'm
We didn't
sorry.
require it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, second reading, please.
Second reading Bill Number 5733 by title only, an ordinance authorizing, or an ordinance approving site plan approval for an outdoor smoker at Twin Oak Wood-Fired Fair, providing for the enforcement of this ordinance and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. You have a motion, please?
Motion to approve Bill 5733 into ordinance form, Your Honor.
And second? Okay, motion is made by Alderman Lay, second by Alderman Nguyen to approve Bill number 5733. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Toohey.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Bill number 5733 is now ordinance number 4408.
Thank you. First reading of Bill number 5734.
First reading Bill Number 5734 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the city administrator to execute the attached 2013 Community Development Block Grant Municipal Housing and Community Development Supplemental Cooperation Agreement.
Okay, synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor, Bill 5734 for the Municipal Housing and Community Development Supplemental Cooperation Agreement, CDBG. This bill is for an ordinance authorizing the city administrator of our city to execute the 2013 Community Development Block Grant Municipal Housing and Community Development Supplemental Cooperation Agreement. Say that 10 times fast. On May 21st, 2012, the city of Brentwood, and we also held a public hearing to discuss the allocation of $20,000 in community development block grant funds, which were to become available after January 1st of this year. The Board of Aldermen agreed the 2013 funds should continue to go toward home improvements. At present, there are 0 people on the waiting list.
Alderman Saunders.
We did this last year, and I think it's a good program, but I had a resident that in the process, since obviously they're in need when they apply for these grants, she still had to pay our permit fees and so forth, and I wondered if going forward, if we wanted to waive our fees just for this program, just this program.
I actually tend to agree with that. I mean, they're getting federal funds for this program through St. Louis County administers it, and typically most of the improvements are limited to $5,000, at least from a grant standpoint. That's usually
correct.
our limit. And so, their permit fees really couldn't be that much. So if they're in need to get the grant, I don't know why the city wouldn't want to waive those fees. Under this program.
So if we could amend this bill, just that we will
Actually, I
also-
don't think you could just make that motion separate from this
Oh,
bill.
okay,
You don't need
thank
to
you.
have it in the ordinance.
Right, it's
Okay.
separate from this.
This is the
Yes,
just the
that's right,
agreement
that's
for-
just the
yeah.
contract. Thank you.
So, but we'll do that in just a second. So we had a first and a second. We need a second reading, please.
Second reading Bill Number 5734 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the city administrator to execute the attached 2013 Community Development Block Grant Municipal Housing and Community Development Supplemental Cooperation Agreement.
Okay. We have a motion, please.
Motion to approve Bill 5734 into ordinance form.
And second.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Lay, second by Alderman Nguyen to
I
perfect
wish
bill number.
somebody else would say
I know,
that.
they're all sleeping tonight, Lee. To perfect bill number 5734 into ordinance form. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Toohey.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Bill number 5734 is now ordinance number 4409.
Thank you. First reading of bill number 50. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to go ahead and make that?
Do I make it
motion?
in new business, or do you want me to make
No,
it here?
just go ahead and make a motion
Okay.
that.
I just move, I'll make the motion that the residents that are accepted for a housing grant, that we waive our permit and building fees associated to their project for which the grant is awarded.
Second.
I'll second that.
Hey, Lady Bill.
Which was made by Alderwoman Saunders and second by Alderman Robertson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Great
Thank you.
idea.
Good job.
First reading of bill number 5735, please.
First reading bill number 5735 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Showalter and Jabouri PC to provide auditing services for the city of Brentwood for fiscal years ending 2012, 2013, and 2014, providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor, Bill 5735, Professional Services Agreement for Auditing Services for the City of Brentwood. And this bill would authorize an ordinance for the mayor to enter into and execute a professional services agreement with Showalter and Jabouri PC for auditing services for fiscal years 2012, 2013, and 2014. This bill is recommended for approval and reviewed by the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay. Second reading, please.
Second reading bill number 5735 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Showalter and Jabouri PC to provide auditing services for the city of Brentwood for fiscal years ending 2012, 2013, and 2014, providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions? Alderman Saunders?
Yes, I went ahead and looked at the bids that came in because BOLA had put them on file for me with Octavia. And actually, when we looked at the rating, BOLA and Gina had actually ranked Hochschild Bloom 2 points higher than the firm that we're going with. And Hochschild Bloom's experience is vast in municipalities. You know, City of Clayton, there were many. You know, at the Ways and Means meeting, I had made the comment that, you know, I don't necessarily know that it was their work. It's just that they provided a management letter, and I don't know that we followed through with their suggestions. But I do think that it's a good idea to have a new set of eyes and, you know, someone different to take a look at our books. And this particular firm, I'm not sure I know how to say their name, Showalter
Jabouri.
and Jabouri, thank you. They do the city of Maplewood, so at least they have some municipal work, and their proposal seemed very thorough. I do want to question the scope of work, and I'm not certain that there's two bills up so that the audience knows. One is for the audit service, and one is for the accounting services. And I want to clarify what the one for the accounting services is.
Well, why don't we do that when we get to that bill?
Okay, so this is just to do the annual audit.
Right.
Okay, let me make sure I have my...
Your Honor.
Okay. Alderman Kramer?
I just wanted to concur with the consensus of the Ways and Means Committee and also the recommendation of our staff in terms of the recommendation of Showalter and Jabouri. But above that, I equally concur that it's important for the city to now take this opportunity to have a fresh set of eyes, take a look at our procedure and purpose for this particular item. It's been a quite long period of time since we've had a new set of eyes look at all of our systems the way this firm will. And while I do understand that the other firm that's been doing our work has been doing it for quite some time, as able as they may be, this is an opportunity for us to make that change, perhaps get some fresh ideas, fresh feedback, interaction, response to questions. I'm very much looking forward to that opportunity. Thank you. Good.
I just want to make sure, are we talking about the audit services?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
because the next ordinance defines the scope of work. It just refers to pages 9 through 12, and I just got this tonight. I emailed Bulla earlier, but I didn't have a chance to go back to my computer. So anyway, I wanted to talk, I think, about what that is. Can you differentiate the accounting versus?
I came up just to clarify on the, just for the record, I want to make sure on the points, the total points for Showalter and Jabouri was 198, and Hochschild Bloom was 185.
Oh, I must have read them wrong then. I
So
guess the front
it was the
page, there
total
was
of
like
the
a
two
94
columns.
and a 96.
Yeah, there's
I
two
missed.
columns that have to be added together, and they are, so.
I apologize.
Yes.
Can you, just briefly, we'll get into the detail, but the differentiation between the two different bills, the audit versus the accounting service, they're separated.
Holshaw Bloom currently does both for the city. And what they do on the accounting side is basically make sure that the city has all of the reconciliations, everything's in order. They also, a big piece of that is they go and work with UMB Bank as the trustee for the TIFs. And so that is a big component of what they provide on the accounting side.
Thank you.
Second reading, please.
I believe we've had a second reading.
Oh, did we have a motion then? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Alderman Lady.
Motion to approve Bill 5735 for the auditing services into ordinance form.
And second?
Second, Your Honor.
Thank you. Motion was made by Alderman Lady, second by Alderman Kramer. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Toohey.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson. Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Bill number 5735 is now ordinance number 4410.
Thank you. First reading of bill number 5736, please.
First reading bill number 5736 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Showalter and Jabouri PC to provide accounting services for the city of Brentwood for fiscal years ending 2012, 2013, and 2014, providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The topic for Bill 5736 is professional services agreement for accounting services for the city of Brentwood. This authorizes an ordinance, if approved, to authorize the mayor to enter into that contract for professional services agreement with Showalter and Jabouri PC for accounting services for the city of Brentwood fiscal years 2012, 2013, 2014. This was reviewed and recommended for approval by the Ways and Means Committee.
Alderman Lady.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was the lone dissenting vote at the Ways and Means review of these. I would like to renew my suggestion that for the year 2012's accounting services, that we work with the Hochschild group again and allow Showalter's group to do the auditing. Separate set of eyes. We're running a little tight in the year. Both firms said that they could make it work this year. I'm just not comfortable with the same firms looking at the accounting side and the auditing side. I do understand the professionalism. I do understand that the large firms, they have different divisions so that it won't be the same people doing the accounting and then coming back and auditing that work. But I would like to suggest to the board that we keep the accounting with the current firm and let the auditing for the first year with the other and see how it works. I'll make that a motion.
Is there a second?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Alderman Saunders.
Okay. Gina, could I ask you questions on this one, the scope of services? Okay, so is this different than what our scope of services with Hochschild Bloom? Is this?
Well, we attempted through the RFP process to divide the work between the two. Currently, Hochschild Bloom does both, and it's kind of just done together. But for the auditing side, it's basically putting together the financial statements and preparing the CAFR, and then, of course, the audit letter.
Okay, for the accounting services, though, what is this contract permitting?
The accounting services, they are preparing the city's records in order for the auditors to prepare the financial statements. So they're making sure that the reconciliations are prepared, and they're working with the auditors and putting the financial statements together.
Okay. In the summary, it says, for their scope, the mayor and board of aldermen are responsible for administering the resources entrusted to them to carry out government programs. A major factor in fulfilling this responsibility is ensuring that adequate internal controls exist. Public officials, legislators, and taxpayers are entitled to know whether the government is properly handling funds and complying with the laws and regulations. They need to know whether the government organizations, programs, and services are achieving the purposes for which they were authorized and funded. Officials and employees who manage programs must be accountable to the public. This concept of accountability is intrinsic to the governing process. Internal control is a technique used by managers to help a department achieve these objectives. Internal control is the term we use for the structure, policies, and procedures used to ensure that government accomplishes its objectives and meets its responsibilities. Communication is an essential component of a comprehensive framework of internal controls. One method of communication that is particularly effective for controls over accounting and financial reporting is the formal documentation of accounting policies and procedures. A well-designed and properly maintained system of documenting accounting policies and procedures enhances both accountability and consistency. The resulting documentation can also serve as a useful training tool for staff. Our solution to the current situation will allow the city to improve its internal control over financial reporting and assist the mayor and board of aldermen in fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities. I don't understand why this summary is in here unless Alderman Toohey was in the patch. He had, an article and speaking to a way of implementing internal controls, and basically it's the foundation of accounting. It is what the accounting department does. I actually worked in audit. I was a controller of a firm, and that is your job to do that. Are we hiring them to help us with internal controls here? Is that?
Part of the audit is that they report on the city's internal controls, and we have a report from Hochschild Bloom each year that reports on the city's internal controls.
That's just the management letter, though. It's a
No,
byproduct.
there's a separately issued report on internal controls. They issue their audit letter, they issue the internal control report, and then they issue the management report, the management letter. It is.
So in all these times up here that I've asked for whether we do get anything from the internal controls, we haven't received a copy of that. I don't have a copy of that. I'm not saying this year's. I'm talking even prior years.
Again, the management letter, I know you asked for it, but I never heard you ask for something separate as far as the internal controls.
Okay, I was wondering,
it's required.
Alderman Toohey, why you had put that, why you decided to go to the patch with that article? I just was curious.
No, let's stick with this ordinance right now.
Well, it kind of does segue into here because the state audit is a performance audit. It actually looks at the internal controls. It stays in the year 2011, but it does do that, and it does evaluate your risk, and it will give a comment on that. And so it's premature until that audit comes out to say whether or not our controls are weak or strong. We need to wait for that. When that audit comes out, though, we have to evaluate it. If our controls are weak, naturally we need to improve our controls. We would all agree with that. But then that also means that if there are red flags for fraud, you would do a fraud audit. And I want this board independently to be able to hire who we decide for a forensic audit if it's needed. I have no idea. We have to wait till that comes out. But if it's needed, I don't want this document to be acting as that's what we're hiring them for, or I just want to make sure, because we can't make any judgment until we get those audit results. But those audit results, it is a performance audit, and it did look at the internal controls. And I think we need to wait to make any statement about what shape our accounting department is in until we get the results of that made public.
The only services that they're going to provide are the services that are required in order for them to report on the audit, the financial statements as a whole, and the internal controls as part of that audit.
Okay, and my other thing is when it says in the contract, if extraordinary circumstances warrant an expansion of accounting services, a contract addendum agreeable to both the city and accounting firm must be completed. Can I assure that that contract, any addendum, will come to this board? That it won't just be?
It has to come
Okay,
to
well,
the
I didn't
board.
know the threshold and the cost and that, but
Cost
that,
has no value
okay,
where this is
so
concerned.
those will be. I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure I understand what we're voting on. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Second reading, please.
Second reading bill number 5376 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Showalter and Jabori PC to provide accounting services for the city of Brentwood for fiscal years ending 2012, 2013, and 2014, providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Do you have a motion, please?
Motion to approve as submitted, Your Honor.
And second?
Well, you go ahead.
Motion was made by Alderman Kramer, seconded by Alderman Robertson to perfect Bill number 5736 into ordinance form. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
No.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Bill number 5736 is now ordinance number 4411.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, accounts against the city. Alderman Kramer.
Yes, Your Honor. The board members should have a warrant list in front of them this evening, dated March the 4th, 2013. Total amount is $88,085.08. In the place of the Ways and Means Committee, I did recommend some additions to the explanation. Otherwise, I recommend the approval of the warrant list as submitted.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you. Bola, if I may, first page, bottom of it, the LK Real Estate Consulting. We have no budgeted amount. Would that be from prior year that we didn't carry over? Or?
The only reason why that expense is now materialized is because Ellen is out.
Right.
But we
We've
didn't.
never had a need to budget for it in the past.
Okay, but we have nothing in our current budget, 2013's budget, that covers this arrangement.
We're hoping that either we will have savings to cover it or it will be part of our budget amendment at the end of the year.
We just didn't have a category to put it into.
Understand, but we also haven't physically allocated the funds to be able to say, yes, that's there to
No,
budget
we
it.
approved hiring
We
her.
appro-
just
exactly,
didn't-
we did.
We just didn't have a category for it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And did you have another question?
Nope.
Okay. Motion.
We have a motion on the floor.
And do we have a
Second.
second? We did.
Oh, I apologize, Your Honor, I did have a second question, thank you.
I thought you said you did.
Yeah. Second page, last item. That was the railroad easement right away. Have we had further discussions with them to try to reduce that bill?
No, we haven't. Would the board like us to?
I believe we did discuss it at one point, and I raised the issue that to have that further done.
Yeah, we could talk to him. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fine. Yeah. So we had a first and a second to approve the warrant list. Alderman Robertson. First, motion is made by Alderman Kramer, second by Alderman Robertson to approve the warrant list as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, reports of committee and department heads. Under the mayor's report, I really just have, well, I have a couple of updates. I'll work with Bola on this, on the SCP grants through East West Gateway for the two projects that we applied for. Hanley Industrial Court, we have a better scope of the project. It would include actually much more sidewalk than I had thought. Hanley Industrial Court Association has agreed to contribute $75,000 towards the matching funds,
20%.
which would be with the 20%. So that would lower our basically to about 125 instead of 200,000.
132,000.
Okay, thank you. And then and thank Bola for that. They came first with 50,000. I suggested she asked for a little bit more. She asked for 100. They came back with 75. So
Good job.
Good job.
That was good. So, but the second application, in talking to East West Gateway and our consultants, this is for Manchester Road. The scope of that project could increase if we decide to go forward a little bit. In talking with MoDOT, originally they had thought, but they said that they could contribute, and I'm not going to go into, I'll get to the final numbers instead of going through the long story, but basically they can contribute just over $700,000. Originally we thought that we'd be able to use that as additional matching funds and then increase the grant and then do a larger project, maybe including removal of utility poles and so forth. And then as we got further into discussions, it was realized we can't use MoDOT's $700,000+ towards a grant because they are already federal funds, the portion that they're giving to us. The scope of the project that we were looking at doing, so that can be used to offset some of the costs, though, of the overlay of the asphalt, the maintenance that they were going to be doing eventually there anyway. We are at about $2 million for the sidewalk and curb work that needs to be done along that stretch, basically from Hanley Road to Brentwood Boulevard. So the total grant amount would be $2 million. And if we wanted to proceed, then our matching funds then would be about $400,000 over that 3-year period. That would include new curbs, sidewalks along that stretch. They will not allow, or chances are you wouldn't get the grant for the removal of the utility poles. That portion alone was about $6 million. In order to bury those lines and do that. The issue along that corridor is, even to make these improvements, which would be big improvements to put in the new sidewalks, it's very challenging. You're not going to be able to see curb and gutter like you do in a lot of other areas along that corridor because of the way that a lot of the buildings are laid out in their parking areas. For instance, I'll just use lawn care equipment as an example. You couldn't put a curb and gutter in front of his business because then nobody would have any way of getting in and out. Basically, his entire front of his building is a curb cut. That's why you almost have to have that swaled drainage system in there, and then the sidewalk being flush with the existing pavement. Which is one of the things that brings the cost of that project up as we're going forward, and really got it up to that $2 million because of the way this all has to be constructed. So that's where we are in that grant. We could still go ahead and submit it and see if we get it, but it would be a little bit higher commitment than we were anticipating, being $400,000 opposed to we were estimating about $200,000 before that. So that's kind of where we stand with that one.
And that's over a period of, that's not.
Well, it'd be the same 3 years. So, your first year you have your engineering, which is the probably the least expensive. Well, I take that. Engineering. Then second year is usually your right-of-way acquisition, which along that corridor I don't think we were going to have much. MoDOT already has most of the right-of-way that we would need, and we're not going to be moving any of the utility poles. And so then the third year would actually be the construction, which is usually where your biggest costs come in. So this is a 2014 or 15?
15.
So that final year would actually be 2018 where you had that biggest chunk.
In MoDOT's agreement to work on this project, are they anticipating surveying Manchester Road to assure that it's in the right locations? When we did the Manchester Road corridor, they argued that they hadn't done it in so long that they couldn't assure us.
Well, not the roadway. They couldn't assure us of the right-of-way. Because what we were asking them at the time was, according to some of the legislation, the utility poles, if they are in their right-of-way, in MoDOT's right-of-way, and they are going to do improvements to the roadway, they could require the utility to move those poles at their expense. But that didn't come into play, that it would work that way in this instance.
But if they're not assuring that they're willing to survey this area to assure where the right-of-ways are, could our costs drastically change the minute we start working towards putting in different things and having to prove where it is? Because we didn't price in putting in the survey.
Well, again, that's part of the engineering. That's the scope of the work. Whenever they do that, is seeing where the right-of-way is for the construction in the design of the project. I would say that they're pretty much going to be replacing the existing things that are there, so the sidewalks aren't going to move that much. If anything, you may be able to narrow the street a little bit and put maybe a smaller swale in there.
It makes it more difficult for us to be able to say, okay, if we go with what we're talking about, we're now looking at $400,000. I can foresee the cost acquisition raising us even further beyond that, but we're into a grant that says we're locked into these numbers, so the city pays up the difference. And I'm not.
We're working with MoDOT. We're planning on working with them on this project at the same time, which is why they're
fully in agreement.
Right.
But this is a stickler point that before we get locked into the grant side,
I can ask the question.
I want their assurance that they're picking up that cost because it's their
Well, if that's going to be the basis for your vote, they're not going to give you that assurance.
Well, but Pat,
you know,
we could be agreeing then to get into something that financially could bankrupt
well, then
us.
here, let's look at it this way. So then we're going to go down there and make these improvements down there. And we're going to say to a property owner, you know, the sidewalk's off by 6 inches. It's in, you know, we need your right of way, and they want us to buy it from. Well, what are we going to say? They don't want the improvements in front of their property. I mean, you have to be, most of the businesses and property owners want this to be done. They're not going to fight you over putting in new sidewalks and making those improvements in that area. I think that's...
it's a large financial risk. I know it is something
well,
that should be
if
done.
If it got to that point, then we could not do the project.
That's an option that you always have, but right now we're at the point of writing the proposals and putting it in. If we cover some of these bases before we lock ourselves into some of the numbers,
then we're going to have to pay to have it done, and that's what the engineering phase of the project is for.
Okay.
We do the same thing on Litzinger right now. We don't know exactly where all those right-of-ways are, but we're designing it now. That's why you have that year of right-of-way acquisition for whatever you might need.
Okay.
Alderman Saunders.
And we hope they donate the property.
Right, and I don't think I don't think along Manchester Road right-of-way is going to be an issue.
By
So
law.
are we saying that the applications, I know they're not, I think the final
due
deadline.
this Friday.
Yeah, is this Friday. So now are the applications ready?
We are finalizing, you know, the last couple of things that we need to check off on. I have most of the letters in support of the project, particularly for Hanley. And in Manchester, we're just resubmitting the letters that we submitted last fall for the Manchester Road project.
Well, now at the meeting, Manchester Road, we were talking about that, and that was 800,000, but you're saying that one's 2 million now?
Now we have better numbers. Those were preliminary. Now that we've had...
And that's why I'm always, though, saying, you know, approving things before we have our ducks in a row, because 800,000 to 2 million is...
The resolution allowed us to authorize CBB to go forward with all the necessary work to put the application together.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought we were actually approving the application. So then now do we need a process? They put it together, but do we make a motion whether
No,
we have
I'm
to go
doing
forward?
that. So I'm informing the Board of Aldermen that we will submit the application on Friday. And with this application, East West Gateway requires that we submit 0.5% of the federal funds that are to be received for each one of the projects. So for Hanley Road, that would be an application fee of $4,150, and then with the Manchester Road project, the application fee would be $8,000. So that's a total of about $12,000 plus that we will submit on Friday to East West Gateway for both projects.
Okay, and that's what I was asking last time. Were we approving, because this is the catch-22 that we had last year when Rob Goldterman came to Ways and Means. If we approve the application before we know the numbers and send it through, Ellen Rochakov said, you don't submit an application, and if they accept it, come back and say, well, we don't want to do it because the Board of Aldermen said it's too much money. Do you know what I mean? So do we
but now
have
we're
to...
submitting the application for the application will be submitted for $2 million. Let's just talk about Manchester. So it will be for $2 million, and then the scope of that project will fall into those lines. That's when we get the engineering in to get it designed. And you know, again, it can change a little bit, but hopefully we'll stay within that budget for that portion of the project. You know, last year, you know, when they brought that to us, and I think that's a good point. We applied for a grant to do some improvements on Manchester Road last year, and we were turned down. And we've been working with East West Gateway to put this application together, and I think they really would like to see this project happen because they see that there's a definite need down along that corridor. But last year, going back to Hanley Industrial Court, you know, and I think there's some confusion there. You know, when Hanley Industrial Court Association brought that to us, you know, ultimately we decided not to go forward because we didn't have enough information. But we can't stop people or organizations from bringing things to us and trying to get us to do them. But once we talked about it, and I was on the phone on vacation and got this, you know, it just wasn't going to work, and so it didn't. And then we refined things and got it done so that we could get it done this year. You know, ultimately, if we get into this project and all of a sudden, it's not $2 million, it's $8 million, well, we're not going to go forward with it. But I think it will stay within the scope of what we're looking for with these estimates. So.
And then can I also, does it hurt your chances, Bola, if you apply for both grants? Because, I mean, you know what I mean?
You never
like
know
Hanley
when
and
there's going to be
Manchester.
available funds again, which is why we thought we'd propose the two.
I mean, I know we need to finish up the work at Hanley Industrial, but I Manchester sorely needs those improvements down there. So I hope they
I'm
don't
being
get-
told that there might be some additional funds later this summer for another Great Street project. Since we have the completed application from last year, we'll just freshen that up, and if the board
Right.
chooses that we should apply for it again, provided we don't get this one, then we'd submit the application again.
Do they ever grant a city two
Mm-hmm.
grants?
And I think that the other thing that they like to see too is the Hanley Industrial is a continuation of a grant we've already been awarded, and actually it's a lot more sidewalk than the existing project. So and so it's a continuation. It's a moving forward, making those improvements in the area. So I mean, right now we've got 3 approved grants in the city of Brentwood.
Yes,
So,
I knew
right.
that.
And so we've got.
We just
Hanley
really need to
Industrial
get to
Court,
Manchester.
Litzinger,
Each
and
project
Rose
is a
Avenue.
standalone. It
Right.
just depends on the number of points that
Okay.
you were able to
And
accumulate.
how much money they have.
And the partners and letters of
And timing.
support.
Thank
It
you.
is. It's all timing.
Thank you.
And so, but to answer your question, just so you're very clear, if we don't want to proceed with Manchester, then somebody should probably make a motion that we want to, not go forward with that project. But I think, that the funds are there right now, and we should try to do it, because again, this isn't going to start until 2015.
And it's not going to get any cheaper.
Well, and that's
No,
yeah. I mean,
it-
again, these are all estimates. I mean, that's a key point. I mean, we're talking about construction costs in 2018.
Right. It's relative.
Who knows
but-
what oil is going to be then? So.
But Bola and Gina, you feel like, do we have like a 5-year forecasting for our capital improvement fund? Because that's where these funds would come out of?
Right,
And-
Gina and I, do you want to come up, Gina? Gina and I talked about it. We anticipate that by then, we would have completed the Rose, the Litzinger, and the Hanley Industrial Pedestrian Project.
So, I mean, do you feel confident that we will have the funds there, and at the same time, too, we're getting our fund balances to where they need to be? I hate to give up federal money. I mean, especially for Manchester, we really need to get that done.
Well, we talked a lot about that. We're working on the 5-year CIP document right now, just kind of aligning all the department's priorities, getting all of that there along with our funding. But the thing that we talked about is you have to make sure that you have these projects in the pipeline, because if you miss an opportunity this year, now you're looking at starting projects in 16, then you're looking at projects in 17. And so you want to make sure that you're constantly looking at your needs and getting those grants so that you have those on the horizon. But we have the funds now if we needed them.
Okay.
But certainly at that point, those will be scheduled into our CIP document
Thank
and
you.
the funding for them.
Thank you.
Okay. So really, unless we don't want to do one of them, we really don't need to take any action. Staff will proceed with the applications to get them done. But we just wanted to update you on what the numbers are, and hopefully, again, we'd be successful with the Manchester Road this year, where we were not last year. So, okay.
Are you still under the mayor's report?
Yeah, one other item. The Municipal League Conference was a few weeks ago. We weren't able to attend, but I just want to make everybody aware that as an elected body, we need to be very aware of what's happening in our state legislative, especially now. There is still a lot of undercurrent and rumbling about the sales tax distribution in St. Louis County, the number of municipalities in St. Louis County, and a lot of money being spent by Rex Zinkfeld here in Missouri to basically change the form of government in both St. Louis County and the state, for that matter. One of the things that they're working on now is this, basically trying to change the structure of St. Louis County, which could eliminate a lot of municipalities. And I think we need to be aware and keep up to date on those things as elected officials, because if we're not paying attention, things can happen very quickly at the state level. And and the sales tax redistribution that was talked about a little bit over a year ago is one of the key components of that. And whereas a lot of people think it would be great for the city of Brentwood to get our full of the money that goes into the pool city back, the reality of it is, if that were to happen, St. Louis County would really push to take the entire 1 cent instead of the percentage that they're taking now. Because they say they could distribute it more fairly that way, which would mean we would actually get less. And then that's going to force some cities to basically merge with other cities because they're not going to have the funds to be able to take care of themselves. So we need to be paying attention to that and talk to our state representatives both in the Senate and the House that we want to make sure that municipalities remain and have their control over their own destiny, basically. So just something to keep in mind as we're moving forward. That's all I have under my report. I'm sorry, Alderman Kramer.
Question for you under your report.
Yes.
Going back in time to the project approval for the Drury and the utility lines, once upon a time we were going to have that as the earlier part of the project, and then I think the cost exceeded their initial estimates.
No,
or
I think
what is
they're
the
a
delay
little
on
bit,
that?
but not much. They're within budget, aren't they?
They haven't brought it back asking. Why don't I inquire into that?
Okay.
I don't think
bring
they're
that
ready to
back.
do that yet.
Okay.
But yeah, they're really.
We did ask that they
but-
bring it back if it exceeded the amount that we
And
put
we
in
hadn't
the
heard
agreement.
from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we'll get an update on that.
Thank you.
That'd be a big improvement.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Public safety,
No report.
Public Works.
No report, Your Honor, other than to tell you, the public, that we are having our third meeting for the review of the survey questions on the Parks and Rec needs
Good.
Wednesday.
Okay. Director of Planning, anything? I don't think so. Okay, thank you. Ways and Means.
Yes, Your Honor, the year's dates for the pre-scheduled meetings for Ways and Means have been released. I don't know if they're quite on the website, but they have been sent out.
They're on the website.
Okay. And our next meeting is coming up 20th. Thank you.
20th?
And it'll be a 6:30 meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. City Attorney.
No report, Your Honor.
City Clerk Administrator.
2 items, Your Honor. Sue, would you like to present the ICE?
Good evening, Sue Cruson, Business Manager, Parks and Recreation. Every several years, we look at the rates between the room rental rates and the ice rink rental rates, and Tom, that's hard to say too. The last time we increased the fees was in June of 2009. I know the first question you're going to ask is, why didn't we do this with the budget? Because the way the rink is set up, it is done in June right after the shutdown. And it was actually something that was just brought to our attention really, really late in the year in comparison to what other rinks do. It's really only $5 more. And what it will do is it will increase our revenue between $5,000 and $7,000 for this year. 2 of our biggest rentals, the St. Louis Skate Club, which rents close to $60,000 a year in ice, and the Rockets, which is about $45,000 to $50,000. They are both aware that we're probably going to do this, and they're okay with it. And that's about half the revenue of the rink between those 2. So we're just asking if you would please approve that so we can move forward with writing the contracts.
The $5 increase. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What's the quantity, Your Honor? $5 per
Hour. Isn't it Sue, an hour that you're talking about?
Yes, per hour.
Thank you.
Yeah. Per year.
Yeah. Per minute, per.
Not worth the paper.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second?
Second, Your Honor.
Okay.
We don't need a motion now.
Do you have any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
In my weekly report, I indicated that we wanted to bring to your attention the Professional Services Industries, Inc., PSI. They're the firm that's conducting the asbestos survey.
Yep.
Following further review by Kevin Cousins and I, we believe that their scope of work should include the fees, the additional fees that they're asking for. So we're going to go back and talk to them about that. So
Yeah,
no action.
they've asked for $1,000 more.
Right.
And Bo and I talked a little bit about this, and I think it should be in the scope that they submitted under, so we're going to go back and talk to them. Yeah.
And it's reimbursable as well.
Huh?
It's reimbursable.
Well, if
as
we had to
well.
spend it, we shouldn't have to pay it. I mean, they bid on this price. They knew what they needed to do, so if they underbid it, that's their problem as far as I'm concerned.
Right, and I agree, because that's not fair to the other
Right, exactly.
people.
So,
That's
okay.
it, Your Honor.
Okay. Excise Commissioner, nothing tonight. Library?
We'll meet tomorrow evening, 6:30.
Great. Nothing from Municipal League. Communications?
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Historical Society?
No report.
And any unfinished business?
Just want to make an announcement, okay?
You want to do new business?
No, just a business.
Okay.
That isn't even business, really.
Right.
I just want to give a shout out to the Brentwood Public Schools. 1986, my son Paul graduated from the Brentwood Schools, and I just found out yesterday that his son, which is my grandson, has been awarded an opportunity to go to West Point. So I think a lot of it started back when he was at Brentwood.
Very good.
Well, and Paul went to West Point too, so it'll be
Yeah.
2 generations. So
Okay,
that's
2
awesome.
generations.
Right.
Very
So-
nice.
Their mother is smart.
You know, I say that a lot too, Lee.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
New
Okay,
business.
any new business?
If I may, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. Ward 3 meeting for the month of March will be Tuesday night, March 26th at 7 p.m. up here in the council room. Thank you.
Alderman Saunders?
And Ward 1 meeting will be Tuesday, March 12th, here in the council room at 6:30.
Okay. And anything else? Okay. If anybody would like to address the board, please come forward and give us your name and address. We're done. Oh, sorry, Barb.
Hi, Barb Hughes. I'm on Urban, and I just was kind of hoping for an update on the repavement of Brentwood, because I drove down it this morning, and it's pretty sad.
Yes.
So-
Well, we, for a long time, had been misplaced the letter that I had said I received from St. Louis County. And a couple weeks ago, I had a dream, and this is true. Anyway, I thought I remembered giving that letter actually here at a Board of Aldermen meeting to the city clerk at the time, to Shelley. And I went back and looked in the minutes. It was in a meeting in 2006, and found that I did submit that to go into the permanent record, which was in our bound copy of the Board of Aldermen meetings from July of 2006. So we found a copy of the letter. What it said was, it didn't say, well, it was implied that once the Highway 40 project was over, that they would repave Brentwood Boulevard. And what I mean by that is, they started out the letter with saying that because they were overlaying it with the microservicing, that gave them the ability to restripe the roadway. So they were going to add the additional lane to it. At which point, once the Highway 40 project was over, they would restripe it back to the way it was before, which would mean that they would have to overlay it again. And they told us that that would be a mill-in overlay, not just the microservicing. So we did find that letter. We're a couple calls into Gary Earls. He's not returning our phone calls right now. No, I did actually mention it to him at the Municipal League meeting a week ago Friday, that we wanted to talk to him about the Brentwood Boulevard again, but Bo will be trying to get hold of him. So the mysterious letter did reappear, and was in the permanent record where it should have been. And we are proceeding to see what will happen. So they are, just so you know, and we submitted a letter of support. They're applying for a grant through East-West Gateway, the same that we're applying for Manchester Road right now. But again, that wouldn't start till 2015, which means payment wouldn't be till 2018. But we need to do something much, much sooner than that. So,
I have one other.
Alderwoman's Saunders.
Bola, can we get an update on the state audit? I was hoping that was in the newsletter, but we didn't have anything there.
I have no updates.
Okay, no up. So we're waiting on just the state auditors, though,
Yes.
right? Okay. So just the final report. Our part's done.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we done with public comment?
Yeah. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I'll move that.
And second?
Second, Your
All
Honor.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.